Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 131 of the Blockchain Show with co-host Steve and yours truly, Ethan. Today on the show, we're going to talk about Google integrating a new cryptocurrency project with a new smart contract tool, and a Chuck E. Cheese token versus Bitcoin Twitter battle. And the city of Dublin, Ohio, plans to launch a Bitcoin Cash-based SLP token. That story's up first.
What's going on in the world of blockchain?
Well,
Did you hear about Dublin, Ohio? Dublin, Ohio.
Dublin, Ohio. Tell me more.
There's a town called Dublin, Ohio. It's next to New California, Ohio.
Dreamers.
Apparently they have lots of coolly named towns in Ohio, like Dublin. I don't know anything about it, but there's a town named Dublin, Ohio. And what they are doing is they are creating a local government currency on Bitcoin Cash.
It's Bitcoin Cash.
So yeah, they're going to create an SLP, which is a simple ledger protocol token. It's kind of like an ERC20 token for Ethereum, but it's on the Bitcoin Cash chain. And the government, it will allow you to buy like Dublin, Ohio merch with it. Or if you're at like a festival or fair, the vendors can accept this token. They're not going to give it like a dollar value, but it's very, very cool to see a government get involved. You know, why use a distributed ledger when it's just, one government? Why bother with all that extra overhead? And I think there's something to be said for, now the government can't stop if somebody wants to trade. If you wanted to send me your Dublin token, you could do that, and nobody could stop it from happening because it's on a decentralized platform, and that's just pretty cool. It's a kind of like a public beta, a test to see if this stuff works. Up until this point, governments have only been testing. There's been no real project that uses these things, really just tests of it to do a feasibility study. So it should be interesting to see what happens with this. I think that this kind of shows why Bitcoin is not great anymore. When you have something like this, which very well could have gone to Ethereum. I think it's a little more geared towards Ethereum, but it's expensive to run on Ethereum right now. It's not just with things like Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash. Really, you have the token and you can trade the token, and there are some more advancing like Shore signatures or but there's not a whole lot you can do with it, right? Where Ethereum has a much more Turing completeness to it. So you can do anything you can do with the computer with it. And that adds a lot of overhead to it. And so it costs more to run something like this, which doesn't need all those the more fancy smart contract stuff where you can kind of do it on Bitcoin Cash. So I like Bitcoin Cash. I think it was necessary to break from what Bitcoin, BTC or Bitcoin Core or Bitcoin was doing. And I think it's great that we have choice. We have a variety. If some people want to have a token that is merely for buying now and wait until it goes up in value and selling, and you can't really do much with it other than that, good for them. I applaud them in their efforts. But I'm looking for something that you can do a little more with that you can, fuel economies with it. And you can send it to somebody, halfway around the world. If you want to send them a penny, you can do that. And you can't do that with Bitcoin anymore. So I really like Bitcoin Cash. What I've learned with watching Bitcoin go from something that was really amazing to something that's kind of meh. These projects sometimes change, and they go in a direction that kind of like limits its potential, right? And I think that's what happened with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin Cash, I think, is what Bitcoin was originally, right? Or its attempt to fulfill its potential much better than Bitcoin and Lightning ever will. But, and that's what happened with a lot of the Bitcoin project. A lot of projects that would have been built on Bitcoin, like Ethereum, when Vitalik was building Ethereum, he was trying to, see what was going on with the developers in Bitcoin Core, the Bitcoin Core repository. And there seemed to be no movement about making the block size larger by handling more transactions, by being open to other ideas than ideas that would make, blockstream money. And so, Vitalik, instead of building on Bitcoin, which what he wanted to do, decided to build his own currency, own competing currency. And so there's very few people left from the original who had the original ideas that are still involved. They all done their own thing, and Bitcoin Cash is just another attempt at it, or a different variation of it. I think it's great. Yeah.
That's cool. Is it essentially the same open source software, just cloned, and not just kind of like a restart, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so a lot of times you have like Litecoin, what they did with so you have the Bitcoin blockchain, and with Litecoin, what happened was Charlie Lee changed the 10-minute block time to a 2.5 minute block time or something like that, and changed the proof of work from SHA-256 to script. And those were kind of like the two changes. I don't think there were any other changes. So it was basically just like a copy and paste of the old code, but that created an entirely separate new blockchain. So you have a software fork where the GitHub repository, and I think at the time it might have been SourceForge repository, but whatever their software, wherever that was stored and version controlled, was copied and then changed and started a new blockchain. There's other types of forks, and in the case of like Bitcoin Cash, what had happened was Bitcoin was doing a soft fork to add segregated witness and 2x at the time, and so 2 times the block. And the only way but what soft forks basically do is they trick the system into thinking that everything is the same as it was, but it is changed. Okay, so that's a soft fork. You roll out new code where the computers running the new code think that something different is happening in the block, and old computers just kind of don't know what's going on, and so their blocks just kind of get ignored. And so the only way to combat that is to do a hard fork. So you actually basically you have to do a chain split as well. So Bitcoin Cash is a chain split mainly in response to the segregated witness soft fork.
It makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah, and it's really tricky because these forks, people make a big deal about soft versus hard, and a lot of the Bitcoin developers think like anything you do with a soft fork is great, and anything you do with a hard fork is bad, and it's just not true. There are things you can do with a hard fork that you shouldn't do that would be devastating to the ecosystem, and there are things that you could have done segregated witness with a hard fork, and it would have been a much cleaner implementation. Basically, every single developer in the world was on board with segregated witness as a hard fork as well. But it's trickier because when you do a hard fork, if you don't get consensus, then there will be a chain split. And also at the time, before Ethereum's hard fork, everybody thought that there would just be this war between the two different softwares until one bit of software won out over the other. And that's what, people say, like, Andreas is 100% correct. But every single person, every single person thought that what would happen was that they would war for a little while and then one side would win. But with software, you can kind of do you can add little bits of information so that your transaction is only valid on one chain or the other, and it kind of splits the chain so they can both kind of coexist now. And that's what turned out to be what would happen when you have these small minorities where people want to make a change and not everybody agrees with that, is it creates like a separate currency, what's called a chain split, right? So the chain, and so you can look at Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, and in the past, the history of Bitcoin Cash is the exact same history as Bitcoin. So they share this state that existed up until 2017, and they have the same transactions. Where something like Litecoin is a fork, but they don't share the same common history. It's a brand new chain. Ethereum was not forked from the Bitcoin code, but it was kind of used a lot of their what was learned in the project, but it was kind of built from scratch. Yep.
That's really cool. One thing I liked about this for the residents at Dublin, digital identity, electronic polling system, and we already talked about the token of value, but I assume they mean voting, electronic polling system. And that's something we've talked about before.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're going to go right for the voting right away or just, to prove your identity at the polling place. So if you want to go there and do a paper ballot, then you can show them in your Dublin, because they're building like a Dublin app, and then it will have your identity on it. And they have to have the identity because then if you're a Dublin resident, they'll send you I think it was 10 cents worth of Bitcoin Cash. So you can make a few hundred transactions with that. And so they just load you up with 10 cents worth of Bitcoin Cash. And that's something that would, if you were to do it with, say, Ethereum, you'd probably end up having to put a couple bucks on each one at least. And if you were doing it with something like Bitcoin, you'd have to put tens of dollars on it if you wanted it to work. And yeah, just the cost of it would be exorbitant on Bitcoin, and it also doesn't really work that well. It's impossible to figure out how much things will cost, and it's impossible to figure out how long something's going to take. It's so random, so it doesn't really function well anymore.
Just trying to think how that would work for someone who's a bit, someone who couldn't even order an Uber. How hard would it be for them?
Yeah, and this would probably. So here's the thing, the city took that into consideration, and the city made sure that it wasn't a requirement. Like nobody was required to use the Dublin token, and so if somebody was unable to, use modern technology, then be able to, use dollars or whatever else they wanted to use, right? So it's a completely optional function. Yeah, because I think a lot of people, are able to use these things. Some people are much more proficient than others, but something like just opening up an app, it's gotten pretty easy for users to just point to a screen and click, right?
Yeah.
Or point, touching devices just make things so much more simple. And then, yeah.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking about that show Barry. Have you seen Barry yet?
I've watched a few episodes of Barry. It's pretty fun.
It's like it shows the actor. I won't give anything away. He's trying to airdrop his contact information to someone, and he's just talking through the process. Like, okay, do this, do that, and send. And he ends up sending a shirtless picture of himself to his son instead of sending his contact information. But yeah, it'd be cool to get some of the older folks on the blockchain.
Yeah, I think there are a surprising large number of. There's a lot of older people who really get technology and want to, they get the benefits. They get the benefits of they understand how beneficial using these new technologies can be, and the days of grandma and grandpa never being able to program the VCR is a bit over. It's not as difficult as programming a VCR was. Chuck E. Cheese had a bit of a run-in. I guess Chuck E. Cheese has completely removed the tokens from the restaurant, so they no longer have a Chuck E. Cheese coin that you can use. I guess you used to be able to use it. Now they have like the game cards or whatever. I remember going to Chuck E. Cheese when I was a kid. It was like dark, and it was just filthy and just like, why did they let this happen? Now it's bright nowadays. Kind of definitely a weird place though. They announced it, and somebody said, I have some random person, maybe they're well known, but they're random to me, said that they would rather have Bitcoin instead of Chuck E. Cheese tokens. I agree with them on that. And the PR person from Chuck E. Cheese said, like, hey, to each his own fake currency.
That's pretty good. But what makes a currency real, you know?
Right. Yeah, and I think things like, you know, currencies like Disney dollars or Chuck E. Cheese tokens, you clearly know what they are. You give the company some token that's good for services, and they, you know, accept that only at that establishment, right? So that there's a specific type of thing that Disney dollars and Chuck E. Cheese tokens are. That's not really a currency, right? It's do they call it an in-house currency? Do you know what they call that or no? Just, you know, when a company has its own form of currency that's only good at its, you know, only good there. It's like a Disney dollar or Disney buck. Because Walt Disney has Disney dollars. They look, you know, pretty similar to dollars. Chuck E. Cheese has tokens. There's a name for it. And, you know, then you have fiat currencies, which are government money that aren't necessarily backed by anything. They're backed by debt typically. But you can pay your taxes in them, so they have value. And then there's, you know, sound money. There's actually, the sound money is anything that is actually backed by something. So like gold, or it's not necessarily that has to be backed by something, but it's not going to be wildly swingy for inflation and deflationary purposes. So something like Bitcoin kind of qualifies as sound money if it ever got enough usage where you could. It's not stable. The value isn't stable. So the soundness may be there, but the stableness isn't. Something like the Facebook Libra coin would probably be considered sound and stable, which is kind of interesting. They also make the distinction between hard and soft money, which is kind of like a silly distinction between hard money is coins and soft money is like paper bills. And I don't really know why that matters so much, but there's that distinction. So if you say, you know, hard money, you're talking about coins, actual physical coins. And soft money is actually physical paper. Sound money is that it doesn't succumb to inflation or deflation. And stable is that it holds some value that is relatively stable to some sort of external entity.
My favorite comment, it says 1989. Wow, I bet we'll have flying cars in 2019. 2019, people arguing with a rat over fake money. It's pretty accurate. There's like a lot of replies here.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to talk about this last thing, or do you want to go now?
Yeah, sure. What do we got? What's the last thing?
Google integrates cryptocurrency project with new smart contract tool. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, so I guess Google has got involved a little while ago with using like Chainlink. And I guess you can buy and sell Chainlink on Coinbase now too. So it's kind of an interesting... it's, you know, now all the major companies, I think except Amazon? No, I think all of these large tech companies have some sort of blockchain involvement. You know, Google and Facebook was the last one, and Amazon, and IBM is big on it, Microsoft. So that's kind of interesting. Chainlink kind of allows different blockchains to talk to each other. And so Google kind of built a way to use their Google Cloud and Chainlink to communicate between different blockchains. So I think that's kind of cool. I haven't read a whole bunch about it, but...
Google's like the man now. Don't be evil, Google.
Yes. They are the man. Yeah. When did they remove their "Don't be evil" as their slogan or whatever? "Don't be evil" was their slogan up until. No, it was their slogans from 2000 to 2015 when Alphabet took over. Yeah, they just have gobs and gobs of data, and you get cool, way better maps, and you get Gmail, and for the exchange, you give them, all your privacy. So, yeah, it works really well. I mean, but you're probably worth. I think Google, you're worth about $180 a year too. Facebook, you're worth about $120 a year too, on average. So it's a lot of money that they have that they can use to build really good products for you. Craig Wright is on trial right now. He's in court.
Oh, how's he doing?
Well, he's been trying to defend himself against. So he made the fake claim that he was Satoshi and that he had all this money in a joint account with David Kleiman. I forget how to pronounce that name. But so the family sued him for the money that he claims that he has, and so he's kind of like stuck trying to produce records that he is really Satoshi and that he really can't get at this money, and he just has to fake all these. The latest one he tried to create a fake Adobe PDF, but with and so he changed the date that it was made, be backdated to 2012 or whatever, but there was an embedded font that was copyrighted in 2015, so he made the document today or last week, then tried to fix all the stuff, but he forgot about the embedded font. And so there's a bunch of stuff like that. Clearly, the man is a fraud. This court case is really showing it, and definitely not Satoshi. Definitely a fraud. Definitely somebody that you should run away from his projects. His Bitcoin SV is his latest one, and it's just kind of nothing really interesting going on there. So, yeah.
Well, we'll have to follow this story, see how he does.
Yeah, hopefully he'll, disappear.
Speaking of disappearing, maybe it's time we disappear from this episode.
It's time for us to disappear. All right, well, thanks for the show, man.
Thanks, man. Yep. Have a good week.
Alrighty. We'll see ya.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
And goodbye, everybody out there listening. Thank you so much for downloading this episode. See you next week.